Coming up, we discuss the social model of disability and what's our responsibility when it comes to building relationships with companies.
You're listening to Double Tap, your daily accessible technology show. Now, here's your hosts, Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece.
Hello. Welcome to another Double Tap. I am Stephen Scott. Shaun Preece is here on Double Thursday.
You mentioned it without prompting. Well done, you. You are a true night manager. Happy Double Thursday to everyone.
I mean, I'd like to say I'm still playing, but I'm kind of not. No.
No.
Do you know the problem with me? I'm not a competitive person. Well, not in games anyway, that's for sure.
You like passive games, don't you? You know, like the Euro trucking game that you loved so much. It was
Taking
just more about
carrots to
there.
Poland. Yeah, I mean, that's all I'm interested in. That's just an easy, gentle... You know, I even in the game, when I used to play it, I used to turn off all the functionality that would say things like, you know, okay, do you want me to, let you know when you're running out of time? I just turn all that off and say, just put it down, I'll get there when I get there.
Oh, you're such a free bird, aren't you? It's a beautiful thing. Celebrate it. Don't worry about it.
No, absolutely. Listen, today, I've got to say, I'm a bit all fingers and thumbs today. That's a wonderful phrase. If you're... Is that one of those British phrases that no one else will understand?
Who knows?
Let's find out. Email us, feedback@doubletaponair.com. Do you know what all fingers and thumbs mean? But basically, I can't find anything, right? So I had my hoodie that I would normally wear. Can't find it.
Let me just say, I am wearing and sporting a very nice black, I believe, double tap hoodie, which has double tap emblazoned on the left breast.
You are fully uniformed today.
Yes. My microphone has the double tap branding on it. Just a little bit of audio description for everyone there.
How does this work that I get you all this stuff?
Yes.
And then what have I got? Nothing.
That's because you don't look after things. You can't have nice things. It's probably in the loft.
Well, I know I can't find anything today. So I lost the hoodie. And then yesterday, do you remember yesterday I said to you, I was a bit nervous because, the dog was around and I thought, oh, hang on. And I was getting a little bit nervous because I thought, what's going to happen, right? Yep. Oni is going to run away with my sunglasses.
Because you couldn't find them.
I put them in a safe place. Can't find them.
Can't find them. Lost them. That's 2 days on the run where you've lost them. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm thinking?
What?
Time to get a cat. Do cats steal glasses? Is that a thing?
Yes, I think it is.
Oh, well, that's it then. Forget it.
They're still yours.
So, yes, and no sunglasses. So I am braving the lights in my studio today to do this show.
Excuse me, can I just say...
I'm a hero.
I, on the other hand, is sporting some Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses right now. Thank you.
I know the AI is clever, but it's not going to edit out that mistake.
That wasn't a mistake. I was just making it for everyone.
Giving us options. That's what you were doing. Yeah.
Multiple choice.
Listen, I know we're getting close to the holidays. Are you prepared? Because I know how you work, right? You are scrambling around couple of days before buying presents online. It's literally anything could show up.
You had to bail me out, I must say, yesterday.
I am a hero. I know.
We won't talk about it yet.
We can't discuss it, obviously. No, because
thank you very much. Yes. And I am terrible at this stuff. And I blame the internet. That's why I blame technology, Stephen Scott, because I'm always thinking,
quite right.
I'll just get it, next day. It's fine. I got plenty of time. And then, of course, I start to have a look. And around this time, it's, you might get it before Christmas, but probably not.
Yeah, but possibly not, yeah. I know, it's an absolute nightmare. Although maybe just a random thought, but if you started thinking about this maybe a month before, 2 months before.
No, I'm 50-something years old, so I haven't done it yet, and I'm not going to start now.
I did laugh. There's a shop that someone was in locally to me, and the person sent me a text saying, oh, good, now they've put out the Easter eggs ready for...
No way.
Yeah, and someone had mentioned that Jesus hadn't even been born by this stage, and Easter eggs are on display in the stores. I just find this all very bizarre.
And also exciting. We're talking chocolate, Stephen Scott.
I must admit, I do love an Easter egg, but my wife, she's putting the boot down as we go into 2025. On my throat. She's saying, enough.
Are we talking New Year's resolutions?
It's not a New Year's resolution because I don't believe in them. It's all a lot of nonsense. It's all a lot of rubbish. People, all you do. I'll tell you what New Year's resolutions gives you. Well, it doesn't give us anything. It gives gyms a 12-month guarantee of funding. That's
another year of funding.
Yeah, from a bunch of people who basically pay it out of guilt.
I know. I you know what? It's so funny you say that because this week I've been thinking I really should get to the gym. I really want to get to the gym again, and it's just a case of I just don't know how I'm going to get there. Is that an excuse, or am I playing the blind card to myself? Deep and meaningful questions here.
Big questions. Hey, listen. Funnily enough, that's kind of the theme of today's show a little bit. There's a lot of big questions to be answered. Yes, and one in particular focuses on the subject of the social model of disability, something we've talked a bit about on the show. And today we're going to be joined by one of our lovely listeners a bit later to talk us through her views. She's been in touch with us before. Lysette has been on email, but I did say at the time I thought it'd be really cool to talk to Lysette on the show because I had basically been saying, and I've been saying this for a long time, that the social model of disability is absolutely part of the problem. What that is in essence is, disabled people saying, look, society is to blame for the challenges we face. If the world was more accessible, then we wouldn't be as disabled out and about. And I think that that's partially true. I mean, you can't deny that. If you go to a restaurant and and you're in a wheelchair and there's no way to get in, it's all stairs, then yes, you are essentially disabled by that restaurateur who hasn't bothered to think about putting a ramp in so someone can get in who is in a wheelchair. So, there's that aspect to it. But we cannot also deny that, the real world exists. I am impaired. And I said I am impaired because for some reason that's controversial now. Simple facts seem to be controversial.
Yes. I didn't know that. I must have missed the memo.
Everything's offensive now.
How dare you, Stephen Scott?
Yes. Well, you should be offended. I don't know why, but you should be. So, listen, we've got Lysette joining us a little bit later to talk about that. It's a very interesting conversation. We actually spoke to her early in the year, and we just have had so much going on in this tech space. We haven't had a chance to air this interview, so we're going to air that a little bit later on in the program. But for now, do you know what? Let's do this properly because we haven't done this for a little while, and I always feel bad when we don't do this. Are you ready, Shaun?
Hit the button.
Get the drums ready, or whatever it is.
Email. We get email. We get your email every day.
Every day.
Ding dong.
Here's your mail today.
Welcome to Double Tap. If you've never tuned in before, yes, this is a real show.
A tech show, honestly.
It is. It's a tech show and it's even a real show. Okay, so let's get into some of your comments. Rebecca wants to start us off with a conversation on our relationships as blind people with tech companies.
I loved your interview with Mike Shabanik. Please consider doing more interviews like these so blind consumers can gain a more balanced perspective. If we want to be effective advocates, we need to understand the challenges the industry faces when it comes to accessibility. We can be a resource for companies. It does not have to be an adversarial relationship. When blind users complain about the loss of HTML view in Gmail or the stripped-down mobile interface, should we examine the nature of these complaints instead of taking them at face value? For example, are we truly dealing with accessibility issues or are we dealing with usability issues and/or user errors or lack of training on the new interface? I've struggled with Facebook on the PC for a while, but now I'm finding it easier to use Facebook on my iPhone. We cannot and should not rely exclusively on one OS anymore. You have discussed the merits of Windows and the Mac, but I think you should give the Chromebook another look. I'm still learning how to use it, but it seems to be very responsive and it is a budget-friendly option. I also have a BT Speak and hope it can become a portable computer on the go. In my view, the Perkins keyboard is one of the most portable options you can get. I also like my Sense player for listening to books without being interrupted by my phone. There is a place for mainstream and specialist tech, but I also believe there is a danger on being too dependent on specialized tech, with the exception of the Braille display. Specialized note takers are great until their hardware becomes obsolete. Of course, you could say the same thing about Windows 10 computers. Change is the only constant. We either learn to deal with it or fall behind. I struggle with this every day. Love your show as usual. Thanks.
Thank you, Rebecca. A lot of food for thought in there, and I find it hard to disagree with any of that. Not that I would anyway. I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think going into companies and, there is a tendency for people to immediately jump to DEFCON, whatever the bad one is, and, hit the panic button and, hit the let's sue everyone button. And there are absolutely times when it's necessary, but it sometimes feels like that's the first option for some people, and almost to shame companies as well who don't quite get it right. And I think working with companies, talking to people, look, talking is a good thing. I mean, goodness me, if you look at the state the world's in, maybe we could all learn from just talking to each other a little bit.
That was beautiful.
Wasn't it beautiful? At this time of year, for me to bring people together, I think it's an absolute disgrace.
I think it's a Christmas miracle.
I think it's a disgrace looking to me to solve these issues. But here we are. But no, look,
I think Rebecca's absolutely right. How many times have we seen someone jump on saying, this isn't accessible, when in fact it is accessible? And Rebecca is right in that it's more of a case of usability. Now, it's not to say usability isn't, quite as important as accessibility, because something can be accessible and usability can be an absolute frustration to use. So I just think that we do need to be a little bit more balanced sometimes. But that is difficult to do, right? When you do have companies out there that just totally ignore accessibility. And doesn't matter how far we've come, those companies still exist. And
big companies too.
But I'm thinking of, Elgato, for example, the Stream Deck. That totally, when I contact them, the response I always get is, yeah, we'll consider this as as a feature. It's not a feature, accessibility. I'm sorry, it's not. It's an interface default. It should be accessible. And they're not the only one, of course, So I totally understand. It's such a difficult line to walk, this, trying to be balanced about, I can't use this at the minute, but I'll get in contact with you. And I totally understand it. It's reasonable. But as human beings, myself, I get frustrated and just immediately get annoyed.
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. I think the point about usability that Rebecca's talking about, though, is a little bit different, I think, because what she's talking about there is, and it's actually an issue that when I bring it up with people, and I have done in the past, and it's funny, only when you understand the specialist tech, like a screen reader, for example, you can kind of have a view on this that makes any sense. So I had friends I worked with for years who were JAWS users, who still are JAWS users, and they would say to me that certain websites were inaccessible. And I knew one particular individual, was perhaps, stringing us along a little bit on that one because, maybe someone could help out a little bit, and not essentially they then could avoid doing it for themselves. And
was it me? Sounds like me.
Wasn't you? No, it wasn't you. This was a long time ago. But the interesting thing is, what I learned, because look, you do take it at face value, right? Okay, well, that person's blind. That person's using a screen reader. They're saying it's inaccessible. It must be. But then you get to testing the stuff yourself. When I became the screen reader user, and suddenly I'm thinking, this isn't actually as inaccessible as that person made out. And I found out that when I had sort of told the person this, and they were quite keen to tell me, shh, don't tell anyone that.
Really?
Yeah. And that may be a little bit of a unique example, but the point is, there are times we can fall short ourselves because we don't have the full knowledge. And that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah,
that's okay because we can't know absolutely everything. We can't know every command of a website. We can't know every way to navigate. We can't. People say to me all the time, and you've had this, I've had this, where you'll say, I can't quite figure this out on the website. And they say, oh, yeah, we've just used this JAWS command. And they tell you as if you should just know, as if it's somehow built into your brain. Yeah. Or like I would have read the manual. I mean, manual?
Well, I'm thinking of the new Outlook, for example, right? I mean, I just don't know it yet.
That's the fear factor, though, isn't it? That's the fear factor in this. We all do that. I mean, I did it as well. As soon as I activated the new Outlook last week, I think it was.
Switch back.
The first thing I was looking for was the button to say get out of this. And actually, when I did play around with it, I thought, okay, there's a few things I don't like, but it's not inaccessible.
Exactly. There's a few things I don't understand. This doesn't work quite the same as I'm used to, but it seems okay. And it's something we need to get over as well. But
That's why I think this is where the conversation, if 2025 is going to do anything for the blind community, I think what it has to do is start taking a little bit more accountability of itself. And what I mean by that is that it can't be just one individual who goes on to a panel to talk about accessibility, at a company. I don't mean on a podcast or things like that. That's different. That's personal opinion. That's fine. What I'm talking about is people who go and get paid money. I've had this situation. I've been paid to test websites for companies. And the first thing I say every time I go in is, how many blind people are you talking to? And I've had it more than once where someone will say, just you.
You're it.
And I'm like, no, that's not good enough. I'm like, no, that's not good enough. And you know what? Don't pay me. Pay someone else. But get at least one more voice on this, right?
I've never said that.
At least one. No, because seriously, right? This is the only way it's going to work. If I turned around and said, this website is now accessible, it has the Stephen Scott guarantee, and then someone comes along and says, yeah, but it's not, because you missed this, or this isn't accessible, or did you know it doesn't work with this screen reader?
Or on this platform, on this
platform.
Browser. Yeah,
then we've got a problem. Now, you only know that by talking to a range of people. And I should say this as well. I feel I should say this because we don't say it very often, but I've heard those out there saying this. Our good friend Carrie Morales, Carry On Accessibility channel. She often says this, and I think it's a really important point. Not all people who are low vision use screen readers.
Yeah, it's true.
So a site, when it's accessible, doesn't mean it's screen reader friendly. It can't just be that. It has to be that, yes.
Yeah.
But that's not the only thing. And really, when we say screen reader friendly, what do we mean? We mean keyboard friendly, right? Can you navigate this website with a keyboard? Now, then you have the added elements of accessibility, which is making sure buttons are labeled. And the great thing is now, with the tools like Narrator and NVDA being free, VoiceOver on the Mac, Chromebooks on the Chromebook, you can test these things without having to buy anything. You can activate a screen reader, you can test it. But then there are issues there too, because you then have to assume knowledge on the part of the developer. And we often say this, just test your website. I actually heard an organization for blind people actually putting this out, saying, oh, yeah, just turn on Narrator and have a go. Sorry, what? Are you kidding me? Do you know how long it took me to learn a screen reader? And I needed to learn a screen reader? You're telling me some random developer can just turn this on and go, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. What have a clue?
That's perfectly true. But still, I think this all comes down to the teaching of accessibility. When it comes down to universities,
Absolutely.
When it comes down to coding, whatever it may be, accessibility is almost a bolt-on afternoon session of, and there's this thing called accessibility.
If even that.
Yeah, exactly. So there's still things more at the foundations here, I think. But, wow.
And also,
off a conversation, Rebecca.
Well, we could do a whole show just on Rebecca's email, and I love it. Or, I just love that message. But I also want to pick up on something else there you said about the Chromebook. You're absolutely right, actually. I was thinking as we go into 2025, some of the new tech I want to focus on. We didn't get as many reviews down over the first few months of the new season as I'd hoped. We did get a few down, but I want to get more. And one in particular is looking, maybe not a review so much, but looking at the Chromebook again. And actually hearing from you as well. Because look, it's not just about us. We want to hear from you. That's what this show's all about. So if you use the Chromebook every day, or you're using it in whatever, whether it be education or maybe your kid's using it, because that's often quite common now. A lot of children are using Chromebooks at school and iPads as well, interestingly. It's always the devices they never use in workplaces. Why is it always, is it like a school goes out of its way to say, what is it they use in the workplace? Windows. Right, buy 8 million iPads and 10 million Android tablets, because, that's a great idea. Why do they do that?
Whatever deal they can get because of the lack of funding, usually.
Yeah, because you can't buy a cheap PC.
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah, right.
Let's not change the topic.
But the point is, Chromebook is an interesting one. I must admit, it's developing in an interesting way, because the talk is that it's going to be based on Android going forward.
Yeah.
At least that's my understanding.
Chrome OS is gone. It's going to be taught back in Android 18 or something.
In a PC shell. Now, that'll be interesting. That will be interesting. We shall see what that comes.
I think the thing with Chromebooks is that web apps have become incredibly powerful, and accessibility has improved on web apps. I mean, the amount of stuff that you do, Stephen Scott, just on a web app, still blows my mind, right? We're recording this on a web app.
This show is done via a web browser. The editing is done within a web browser. Now, it's not the most accessible, I'll give you that. I know we've had a few questions in asking about editing, and sadly for me, some of it does require the use of remaining vision, which I'm not happy
Zooming
with
and
at all.
squinting, I believe the technical term is.
Yeah, and I don't like it. I really don't. I'm fortunate to have a good team around me, so it's not all on me, which is good. But it's not an ideal situation.
You're honest with that. I think we need to be honest. No, I don't want people to think that I'm doing the video editing, for example. No,
the people who do the editing is between me and what vision I've got left, and our team who are sighted.
That's right. Yeah, it needs sighted assistance to do the video editing.
I'm sure there are ways.
Yeah, sorry, we're going off on a tangent. The point I wanted to make was that web
can do it
apps
on
have
a website,
improved, which makes the Chromebook a much more viable option, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's and again, price, right? Although in saying that, the price of Chromebooks are creeping up. Since Chromebook Plus came along, this new standard, I've noticed the price is getting close to, like almost $1,000, sometimes even exceeding $1,000. And I kind of think, what for? A web browser? I mean, I just don't get
that was the whole point for me. The Chromebook was the expense or lack of it. The affordability. Why, as you said, pick up a cheap Windows PC or a new Mac Mini for that matter.
Yeah. Do you know, I saw last night, I was looking at PCs just because I was bored, and I was looking at
How dare you.
Lenovo, it was an IdeaPad 5i. Now, wait to hear this. The specification of this was it was an Intel Core Ultra i9.
Wow.
It had 32 gig of RAM and a 1 terabyte solid state drive.
Okay.
I think it had a fairly decent graphics card for gaming as well. Maybe not not the newest one.
Hang on though, that makes a huge difference to the price.
Well, yeah, but my point though is it's an older graphics card, so it's not something that's newer. I think the current range is it the RTX 40, 60 or something?
Series, we're just about to see the release of the 50 series,
Yeah, so that's the kind of series number you're at with graphics cards, but when you go back to the days of going in and buying the components, you'd buy your ATI Radeon card and shove it in a
all
PC.
in wonder with TV tuner built in.
Yes, that's right. Free remote control included. But now it's all these RTX and Nvidia and all the rest of them that are doing this. But yeah, this one is like a 30 series. It's an LE 30 series. Yeah. Anyway, the point is the price of this in UK pounds, as I saw it, was £1,000, and I thought that's not bad for a machine of its calibre, as you might say.
An i9 for a start. I mean, that is top of the heap. An i9 processor.
Yeah, I mean, fast as anything.
Of course. As we've mentioned before about buying PCs, what generation of i9? We're up to what we up to now? 14? I can't remember. So yeah, it might be from 10 years ago. So those are important.
Oh, no, it's definitely not 10. It's not 10 years ago. I mean,
not with a 30 series RTX card in it. It definitely isn't. But I'm just saying you do need to be careful.
And obviously touch screens add to all the cost as well. I don't think I had a touch screen on it, so it sounded like the perfect machine for me. And it was Lenovo, so I knew I'd like the keyboard.
I haven't used the touch screen on my Surface. I thought, this is going to be so good. I haven't even looked at it.
You'll touch it, but you'll only touch it by accident. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Okay.
Horrible. Okay, so Hetty's been in touch.
Hi, this is Hetty Siegel, and I live in Dayton, Ohio, here in the U.S., and I would like to mention the games that I really enjoy. I did a lot of the Ears and the Blindfold series, but now there's another one that is just really awesome. I heard about it through AppleViz, and one of them is called Fruit Pot, and one is called Fruit Pot 2. Now, Fruit Pot has just experienced a few updates, and it rocks. It really rocks. I'm 70 years old, just lost my job, which kind of was a bummer for a silly reason. But now I'm retired, necessarily so. So I have quite a lot of time on my hands. And Fruit Pot and Fruit Pot 2 are just great. I really love them, and you feel rich. You get really rich. It's not real money, of course, but it's a lot of fun. I do say that games can be a bit of a distraction. I'm a Christian, so I know I ought to read the Bible more and pray more, and these things are distractions. But if you want to have some fun, check out Fruit Pot and Fruit Pot 2. You don't have to pay for them, although there are in-app purchases. And I have done a couple of those. When I was working, I did a few in-app purchases because I just really enjoy this whole thing. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that. And I agree about this business about blindness as well, this PC nonsense. My job that I had before is just ultra woke and ultra PC, politically correct. And I got in trouble for an opinion that I expressed to a, quote, friend, unquote, who snitched on me to management, because that's what you're supposed to do in that company. You're not supposed to tell the person himself, you bothered me or you offended me. I'm so sick of the word offended. And
yeah, me too.
And these kinds of words. But anyway, as one of you said, hurtful. You know, I said something hurtful, and I did not mean to. I truly did not. I was expressing an opinion, a religious belief, and I was fired for it with no warning, no corrective action, nothing. But anyway, that's neither here nor there as far as games go. I just really love Fruit Pot 1 and Fruit Pot 2. They're awesome. Now, the Fruit Pot Legacy that is inside of Fruit Pot 1, I find very difficult to use just because I can't seem to get enough coins. But, oh, boy, the new Fruit Pot, the new mini games, the new shops are a lot of fun. And Fruit Pot 2 is also a lot of fun. So thank you, guys. I love your show. We've listened to it a lot, my husband and I. He's also blind. Thank you so much for this program. And I hope you guys are having an excellent day.
Oh, thank you, Hetty. Sorry to hear about the job. Some snitching on you. What is it with people nowadays? All snitching on each other. This is a new thing. This is a new thing, isn't it? No. Oh, let's start snitching on each other. What a horrible world.
Term. Sorry, I hate that term. Snitching, like it's a bad thing. Yeah,
it is a bad thing.
If someone does something wrong, then you need to be held responsible. I'm not saying this in the case of Hetty. In the case of Hetty, and in a lot of cases, I think you just talk to the person and say, hey, you know, that was actually, that remark you made wasn't cool,
exactly.
Or it was hurtful to me. And you talk it out. Totally agree with that.
Yeah, you don't go snitching.
I don't like the term snitching.
See, now you're starting to turn into, I don't like that word. You know, it amazes me how we survived all this time as a species, and suddenly the dictionary is evil.
I'm going to go. You started it now, Hetty. I'm going to go there. The point is, if you find someone, that bloke's burgling my neighbour's house. Oh, yeah, but you don't snitch, right? Nobody grasses on anyone. Absolute nonsense. Get him locked up, scumbag.
Yeah, there's a slight difference between words and actions. That's always my point.
Okay. Yes, as I said, I wasn't talking about Hetty's situation there. That was different.
Yes. Hetty's lovely.
What we were talking about.
We're out of time. We need to move on. So
Fruit Pot, I'm guessing it's a fruit machine thing.
Fruit Pot sounds like a lot of fun. We definitely must test that out. But for now, we're going to move on because we are going to talk about another topic, which I'm sure will get us into trouble. It's a social model of disability. Up next on Double Tap.
Get in touch with Double Tap. Email feedback at doubletaponair.com. Leave us a voicemail at 1-877-803-4567. And now you can send an audio or video message to us on WhatsApp. That number is 1-613-481-0144.
Now, look, Shaun, I know I get a lot of emails and comments over things I say. Sometimes.
No.
I know, shocking as that may appear.
When you're having one of your rants or, going off on one of your tirades, yes.
But it's fair to say some of the topics do bring up some really interesting perspectives. Neuralink, I think, is one of them, which has brought up so many interesting perspectives from people. We heard from Callum recently talking about, as a guy who had no vision at all, really considering, the idea of actually having vision as a result of something like this. And, that kind of goes against the grain a little bit of what a lot of people who have been blind all their lives believe. That, and of course, the whole subject of restoring vision. And, it's opened up a really interesting can of worms. And can of worms are generally not interesting unless you really like worms.
Starts the conversation. Yeah, so many different points of view on this.
That's right. Well, look, bringing one of our listeners into the conversation here. This is Lysette Chaprionnière. Did I get that right?
Almost chaperone, yeah.
I was almost close. It was almost close.
You got it exactly right before you started on the recording.
Well, thank you for saying that, at least. Thank you. That gives me a little bit of credibility, whatever's left. Look, first off, Lysette, thank you so much for coming on. You were the lovely voice of reason, I think, in My Nonsense, as you emailed in with your voice message, and you were talking about, Neuralink and other things. Let's start there, because Neuralink is such an interesting story. What is your take on all of this, and what's your perspective on it?
I think it's very complicated because, as you just pointed out, there are lots of different perspectives in the blind community. There are those who do want to have their vision, and there are those who don't and are quite happy being blind, and there's everything in between. I think that's the other thing as well, that we shouldn't assume that everybody's either longing for their sight all day, every day, or they're totally happy and don't want it at all. There's those sort of in-between perspectives as well. And I really think that we need to make space for all of that. So I think it can be tempting for people to either say, if you want to have a cure, then that must be internalized ableism. It must just be because you've kind of internalized that oppression. Or on the other hand, sometimes people might be tempted to say, if you're blind and you don't want to have sight, that must be just because you don't know what you're missing, or it's just like a sour grapes type of thing, where because you can't have sight, you've kind of decided that you didn't really want to have it anyway. So, yeah, I really think that we need to be making space for all of that. Neither assuming that everybody's going to want it, nor assuming that nobody's going to want it, but also making sure that there is that social infrastructure in place so that people genuinely have a choice, so that the accommodations and things are still there for those who do still need them.
Well, that's a good point, because, Stephen, you mentioned this quite often, the social model of disability. And to be honest, I don't quite understand how this works. I get the basics of it. So should we kick off from there? So someone actually may not need their sight restored because they don't feel disabled in the first place, because society has made adjustments to accommodate that, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, the term social model of disability is one of those that slightly means different things to different people. I think sometimes people just use it to mean the idea that disability is partly a social thing, at least. But there is a more specific theory called the social model, which would say that if you're blind, for instance, that's an impairment. So the condition that you have in your body, that's called an impairment. And then disability is like all of those social barriers that make being blind, for instance, difficult on a day-to-day basis. All of that oppression, all of those barriers, all of the things like, for instance, websites not being accessible, or things not being in Braille, or all of those things, that's disability. So the social model kind of makes a distinction between impairment, meaning the condition that you have in your body, and disability, meaning the social thing. So if you were to adopt that particular perspective, you might say, well, it's disability that we should be trying to solve rather than the impairment itself. And I think the problem is that sort of neat separation might not really work. And because it's trying to kind of separate the bodily or the biological bit from the social bit, and that can become a little bit blurry. And to begin with, that might just sound a little bit like one of those things, PhD people just say this strange stuff and who cares? But I think...
Well, that's kind of where I was coming from a little bit. I was saying that on air. I feel that oftentimes this comes from almost feels like it's coming from an academic background rather than rooted in any kind of reality, because reality is social model, but it is medical model. It is, I do have a condition. I do have, an impairment. There's no way around that. I don't feel it would be appropriate to deny that. And it's not all society's fault. So, but there are things that are, like inaccessible websites, inaccessible venues, inaccessible taxis with a guide dog. that kind of thing. Those are, would, I guess, fall under the social model, but it's not just one thing, is it?
Yeah, you're right. It is very complicated. And I was just saying that those two things sometimes can be very difficult to separate. And I think that's becoming more and more the case as technology develops, that at the moment we have assistive technology. So you have something like your screen reader, which is very clearly outside your body, presumably. Although I suppose these days our phones, there is a theory in philosophy that something like your phone can actually count as part of your mind, or rather the information that is on your phone under certain conditions at least could be part of your mind. And that might sound a little bit strange to begin with, but when you think about how glued to our phones we are, and how much, if you can't find your phone, you might feel a little bit lost. It feels like there's a bit of you that's missing, maybe if your phone just dies.
That's true.
And so actually, when you come to think that these technologies that we have now are just kind of becoming part of us, whether we're just so completely glued to them or integrated with them that they do feel like a part of us, or whether they actually literally go inside our bodies, like something like the Neuralink is, it does become a bit more difficult then to say, well, which bits are the social bits and which bits are the medical bits? At what point does something count as a curing the disability versus making a social accommodation? And at the end of the day, I think we don't really need to solve that. We don't need to sit and work out, is this a social thing? Is this a medical thing? Because as you said, it is very complicated. And it seems to me more productive to just focus on, is this what people want? Is this actually improving people's lives? Without worrying too much about whether we're changing the social environment or the medical thing, or the medical condition.
But isn't it all to the same end? What we're trying to do, whether we try and change society around us to make accommodations, be it through accessible services or whatever it may be, actually, it's all to fix the impairment, right? Rather than go the medical route of some sort of Neuralink implant, or whether we're using apps on our smartphone to navigate us around, help with mobility, it's all to overcome that impairment. So does it actually matter? What I'm hearing from a lot of people is, I don't need to be fixed. Instead, in the case of the social model, it's these services need to adapt to accommodate. But at the end of the day, it's all to overcome that impairment that we have. So is there really a difference?
Yeah, I think that was my point, that it is becoming very difficult to figure out what the difference actually is. So yeah. But I suppose sometimes people do come to quite strongly identify with a disability or with an impairment, if you prefer that term. And so they might kind of build an identity around something like blindness, and then this idea that we could cure that might feel like it's taken away from that. Yeah, it's like, why should I change? So
that is maybe so true, I think.
And this whole issue of identity as well is another area that if you've been listening to me for a while, is that you'll know, grinds my gears a little bit, because, I don't like the idea of being, labeled as a blind person. I'm a person who happens to be blind. I'm a person first. And the argument I often get back is, well, if society thinks that we're not even human, then, we've got a long way to go. And I'm sorry, but I think a lot of people do think that way. I think a lot of people do not consider us human first.
Wow.
My treatment, no, I don't. I've had so many experiences in my life where I have felt like less than on so many levels, whether it's, and this hasn't been me, but I've read about people who have been refused entry to taxis regularly, restaurants, cafes, those kind of things. They talk about feeling subhuman as a result of that. I know from my own experiences of the way I'm treated by assistant staff. Sometimes I've been, if there's anyone with me who's sighted, I will never be spoken to. I can pay for something with my card. I can hand over the card, to pay for something. They hand the card to the other person in order to, give the, put the PIN number in and essentially give the card back. And I feel, yeah, there are people out there, and there's a lot of them. And I do not think for a second it is an unkindness or a
malicious
anything
act.
malicious. No, not at all. I don't think that. I just think that people just see blindness in itself as, they see it as a disability, but almost a disability, towards being human. Thoughts?
Wow. Good luck with that one, Lysette.
No, you're absolutely right. And I know what you're talking about, where people will talk to somebody else who's with you instead of talking to you. And I think sometimes people just don't know what to do they? They see blind person and then suddenly all of their, it's almost like all of their sort of social scripts are gone, and all of the rules of social interaction that they think they know are just seem to not apply anymore. And it's like, well, what do I do now? How do I talk to this person? But I think that goes to show that, and I think that perhaps does show that cure isn't necessarily the solution to everything. I mean, as I said, and as I hope you made clear, I'm by no means opposed to the idea of developing cures if we're cautious about it in the right ways. But there are all these other barriers and bad attitudes that are there. And I think perhaps some of the resistance to cures is kind of coming from that. There perhaps is a sense of, why should I have to change to fit into the world? Shouldn't the world change to fit me?
But that gets to the heart of what I'm talking about here, Lysette. And I think this is part of the conversation that people just don't have out there. And this is why I feel it's so important to have it on Double Tap, because we know people listen, we know people are engaging with us, and we know there's lots of sighted people that listen. And I've met people over my time, and these are smart people. We're not talking about people who don't know anything. I mean, and let's be honest, who knows everything? But, I meet so many people in my life, especially smart people, who will say to me, well, it must be terrible to be blind. It must be awful to be blind. It must be the worst thing ever. I'd rather be dead than be blind. I've had that a few times. I had a guy who was dying told me that he would rather be dead than live my life. And, I think when I hear then people talk about their identity of blindness and being proud of it and wanting to march down the street, waving whatever a blind flag looks like, then I think to myself, yeah, but who understands what you're talking about? How can anybody understand how you're proud of this thing that they would rather be dead than have? That's my thing.
I want to know what a blind flag looks like. I know you just made a serious point.
It's tactile, I'm hoping.
I hope so, yeah. I hope it's braille.
I should hope so, yeah.
I think, Stephen has this about blind pride, and he puts it in the focus of being proud of the actual, as you put it, there's an impairment, right?
I'm not putting it in any focus. I'm putting it in the point no, I'm not, because what I'm seeing is I'm looking at it from the point of view of the person standing at the side of the road watching the parade go by. And we're talking about a virtual parade here, I'm guessing. I don't think there is such a thing. But, let's imagine a parade of blind people marching down the street saying, we're proud to be blind. I imagine myself as the person standing on the side of the road, looking at that pride, and almost a parade, I should say, and asking themselves the question, what are they proud of? Now, I think that's a different answer depending on who's asking the question. Like if a blind person like me's asking, I'm saying, well, yeah, what am I proud of? Proud of an eye condition? That's a different conversation. I think the person on the side of the road is possibly saying, how can you be proud of that? And who wants to be blind? I mean, this is the real conversation that's going on out there, guys. I mean, to me, this is the whole thing, Lysette.
I don't think it is. I think it's exactly what we've talked about before about, well, what you just mentioned about people's attitude to us of, not talking to us and things like that. That's exactly what these pride movements are about. They're about coming out from behind that invisible shield and saying, hey, we are actual human beings. I think that's what the pride is about. Said. Not about, but you keep referring to, why are you proud to be blind? It's not about being blind.
But you've just said if the pride is, or the parade, I should say, is about mixed up my prides and parades. But if my parade is all about showing people I'm human, I think that's a good purpose, because I think I'd rather have that message going out there than hey, I'm blind and I'm proud, because I don't think people know what the difference is.
Lysette, step in.
Yeah. So I think you're right. That might be part of it, that the idea of pride is partly about saying, we're here. You might think that we'd be better off dead, but no, actually we're thriving, we're flourishing, we're able to do fine. And to the extent that we're not thriving and we're not flourishing, that's a societal thing, or at least part of it is. But yeah, there is that question of why would you be proud of it? And I think that is something that people do find difficult to understand. And I may not be the best person to comment on this, because I'd say that pride as such doesn't particularly resonate with me. But I suppose if you were going to go down that route of pride, then it might be, for instance, that you are, well, apart from just saying the kind of we're here, we exist, you may be proud of just the perhaps skills that you've developed, just the fact that you have these alternative ways of doing things and of coming to know things as well. I suppose sighted people can be almost so reliant on sight that they almost don't realize they have other senses in a way. It can that and obviously blind people aren't necessarily don't necessarily have superhuman hearing or any of these myths that people believe, but I suppose you do.
Yeah, don't spoil it for the rest of us, Lysette.
But I suppose you sort of can end up learning to use those senses and learning, just to navigate the world and to come to know about the world in a different way.
Look, can I just say about the blind pride thing? I'm not against people who want to stand up and say, I'm proud of my blindness, I'm proud of whatever you're proud of, right? Good for you. What I'm saying is, what's the goal of it? What is the purpose of it? That's what I'm pushing back on here a little bit, because I feel people are wanting to, and do say, well, I want to show, like you're saying, I want people to know that I exist as a human being, that I am capable, and all of those things. The problem is, I don't think the message is getting through. And I don't know how we resolve that issue.
So we stop.
Yeah.
I don't know if we stop, but I think we need to think about what the message is.
Yeah, and I think that can be a problem where the message just doesn't get through. I mean, I think that's probably a similar problem with the social model as well, actually, where we perhaps previously thought blindness or any of these other conditions are just medical conditions, we need to cure them, and then the social model comes along and says, no, it's all about society. And in one sense, that's an important message that, as you said, a lot of the problems that we do have are based on social problems, but it is exaggerated in the sense that can it all be down to society? No, probably not. It's a very complicated, like the relationship, as we talked about earlier, between our bodies and our medical conditions, and the social environment that we live in is really complicated. So if the message with blind pride is not getting through, then maybe there is an element of that it might feel a little bit exaggerated, where maybe you want to counteract that message of blindness is horrible and it's terrible, it's tragic, you'd be better off dead. And of course, it isn't like that. You can be blind and live a good life. But I suppose pride might feel to some people a little bit exaggerated, although I have nothing against it, particularly if people want to do that. It's probably not something that I would do. But
I agree. I don't feel like pride is the right word for some reason, but I feel it's a pushback about being ashamed of a disability, which I think most of us have felt at some point.
I don't want to be ashamed of it either, but I think that, and I've said this many times on the show, I feel that employment is the core route to getting people to understand this, because ultimately people learn by seeing, right? So whether it be on the media, whether it be on television, I mean, look at gay people, for example. Look when Ellen came out back in the day. Look when we started seeing more gay people on television, we started hearing more about it. The pride movement there worked because, and I do just draw a distinction between blind pride and gay pride, for example, because to me, blind pride is being proud of a condition. And I don't get that really in that sense. But, gay pride, I can understand. It's who you are. It's you as a person. And I know people might say, those who are proud of blindness, they may say the same thing. Well, it's part of me. It's part of who I am. It's the same thing. I would draw a distinction personally, but you may disagree. I just think that the message isn't getting through because ultimately there are no examples out there. There are not enough examples of us out there. You know, it feels to me like in the UK it's David Blunkett. In the US it's Stevie Wonder. You know, there are certain people who we can point to as blind people along the way who are this of excellence and who've done really well. But of course, that's not the reality of blindness. You know, we're not all famous musicians, believe it or not. As great as that would be, but we do
Speak
need
for yourself.
definitely not me. But I would say that there's an importance in getting more people into the workplace. You know, as soon as you sit down with someone in a workplace and you're sitting there talking to them, they see how you use a computer, they see how you use a smartphone. You know, those things being visible, that makes the change. Because I'm not saying it's the only way, but it's a major part of it, I think. And of course, as we've seen, the numbers of unemployed blind people in the UK, the US, Canada, the needle hasn't moved in decades. So whatever this movement is, in my mind, it ain't working.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there's a couple of interesting things there that you've mentioned. So the thing about, is blindness part of who I am in the same way that gay pride works, or is it just a condition that we might want to try to cure or to fix? I think, again, going to say something perhaps a bit boringly moderate and say, well, I just think both of those are perspectives that are fine. I'm fine with people taking either of those perspectives. And
look, let's be honest. Let's be honest. Depends on where and when you said that, right? There was only a few decades ago, there'd be many people saying, well, if you were gay, you should be fixed. Yeah. So, you know, there was that as well.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
hasn't gone away.
So that might be coming, that might be part of why people are resistant to it in the case of any sort of disability. But in terms of how people view their own disability personally, I think either of those options or anything in between, that's absolutely fair enough. However, anybody wants to understand their disability. And I mean, and even just when I think about it for myself, I find it so complicated. I'm not sure that either of those exactly reflects my own view on it for myself.
But can I just ask, Lysette, you say it's complicated, but can I just say, I don't think it is complicated. I think we're human beings, right? If we just level it at that. No, but I keep being told to avoid this, but it's like, but what else are we? We're human beings.
Well,
if we start human there, beings? But we're labeling ourselves as blind person or, you know, whatever it might be. And look, this is not unique to blindness. This is the case around the world. Hey, have you seen the US recently? You know, I mean, come on. It's all about division. It's all about putting ourselves into boxes. I grew up with this whole idea of let's not put ourselves into boxes. Let's not see disability. Let's not see that. Let's see the person first.
And a social model. It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I do think labels and boxes, if you like, can be useful. I see that they can, if we perhaps hold on to them too tightly, then they can cause problems. But I think labels can be useful because they can allow you to go and find the support you need. They can allow you to go and find a community. Just having that label of blind allows you to go and, you know, look up how do blind people do this, or just any label that you might apply to yourself can really help you with that, because it gives us words to talk about ourselves and our experiences. And
our wants. So
I think we need to have those words to be able to describe ourselves, and I suppose acknowledge the ways that we are different and the ways that we are similar.
Well, for sure here in Double Tap, you'll always get a debate about it. I'll tell you that. And listen, I really appreciate you coming on to share your take on all of this and join the discussion on it. If Neuralink came to town tomorrow, Elon Musk personally was to visit Lysette's home and say, I will personally, maybe not personally, but I will get someone who knows something to, put this thing in your head.
Switch your eyes on.
Yeah, that's right. What would you do it, Lysette?
I think I would have a lot of concerns about it. For me, I think it wouldn't really so much come from these kind of pride concerns, though, that we're talking about. I think it would be more, well, for one thing, the safety of it. He's coming to put something into my brain. I've only got one brain.
Yeah.
If anything goes wrong, I'm sort of going from a state where things are the way they are to there's just a lot of uncertainty. So I'd be asking myself, even if there was some benefit to it, how much risk am I willing to take? And then also there have been a few cases of people who were blind from birth or from a very early age who did get sight, and they found it very difficult to process what they were seeing. The things like they're walking around and they're constantly afraid they're going to crash into something because they're not used to being able to like see the wall right in front of them. It was just a very effortful process to work out what they were seeing, and maybe they couldn't figure out what they were seeing until they touched it because your brain's just not used to it. So from that sense as well, I'd be wanting to know how much benefit is there for me. So I think before I accepted something like that, I would want to have all of those kind of concerns responded to. I'd want to know, have they thought through all of this? How safe is it? How well does it work for someone like me who's been blind since birth? But yeah, I think it would be more those kind of concerns for me than necessarily having an identity around blindness. So I wouldn't say that I would never do it, but I would have those kinds of cautions, I think.
As I think many people would.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, listen, Lysette, thank you so much for coming on. Great to have you here. I love when smart people come on our show.
Yes.
Sorry, let me do that again. People who are smart. There you go, see what I did there. I love that. So thank you so much for coming on, Lysette, and do come back soon and do keep in touch at Double Tap.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been great to talk to you both.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. We're out of time for today, but we are back tomorrow, Shaun Preece.
Yes, we are. Thank you. Bye-bye.